Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Zero from TechDragon.info, and today we're gonna talk about putting a computer together. Coffee, by the way. Best mug ever. Anywho, as you can see here, I'm not gonna put it together, but this is more the theory behind how do you buy a computer in components, in parts, and some of the pitfalls that you just need to look for. So I'm not gonna give you a guide of you have to buy this, but more a guide of how do you find out what you need. And I'll show you some things on the computer here in a second as well. This is just a demo. I don't have all my components yet. I'm still missing memory. But we have a cooler, the Noctua NH-D15 SE AM4, which is the same cooler they've been running for quite a while now. It's a good cooler, but this one just comes with AM4 brackets. We have the Crosshair 6 Hero motherboard from Asus, and a Ryzen 7 1700. I decided not to go for the X. I'm just going to try to overclock it. As soon as you start overclocking, the whole X part sort of drops off. The X part is that it ramps up when it's cooled properly. Well, it's going to be cooled properly. I'll show you that in a sec. But as soon as you start overclocking, the whole X part sort of drops off, so there's no point to that. So yeah, I just want to show you a couple of things. So let me unpack this cooler and I'll show you in a moment here what I'm talking about. And here we go, the cooler. It's a massive thing. It's a dual fan push-pull situation. I'm gonna make it into a push thing and I'll show you why in a second. So this is a massive cooler and I'm not 100% sure if this is gonna fit. According to everything I've seen and looked at, it will. But so a couple of things you need to look at when you look for a cooler, and everything ties together. That's kind of the problem. But just from a hardware aspect, look for the clearance level. Do you see my finger here on the side? This is where the memory is, on this side here. And you need to have this clearance from the ground to, actually, go down a little bit, there we go. So you need to have this clearance, because the memory is about this tall. So you need to have this clearance. If you put the fan on there, as you can see here, the fan will cover up some of this, and it probably won't have enough clearance, because the fan comes down here. So then you have only this amount of clearance. So that's something to look forward for. You can't always find this on the manufacturer's page. Look for reviews, the good ones will have the clearance height. And you see there's a nudge taken out of here, that's basically for the memory. It's on either side, so this thing can be mounted either way, and the fan can be on either side. So this fan is going to blow that way, the next fan is going to be on this side and blow that way out the back of the computer case, if it all fits, rather than on this side, because it would actually interfere with my memory. So clearance height on one side of your cooler is something you need to look for. Look for the memory height and look for the clearance height. That's one thing to note. I guess the rest we can actually do on the computer. So let me boot up the computer and get on there, the old one still, my current one, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. This is just knowledge I've done up, got into over the years, and just figured I would share it. It's always handy to know what to look out for. So we'll be right back on the computer. And here we are. Now actually let me but continue by saying that this is in no way sponsored by any of the things you see on screen or on my table a second ago. If any of you guys want to sponsor me, you know how to contact me. That's never gonna happen. Anyways, so the first thing I usually start with is the motherboard, and that is because everything ties into it. Now this is a Dutch website, but it doesn't matter. I'll show you in a second. Pretty much everything important is in English anyway, so it doesn't matter. So where do I start? Well, first, depending on how impatient you are, you can check the directly available. I'm usually not that impatient, depends on what I'm getting, but it sometimes is a good start. Then you want to select brands that you trust and some that you don't trust, some that you don't want with. I've had some bad experiences with ASRock, so I'd rather avoid them. Yeah, I don't care if there's an update available. Go away. I don't think you guys could actually see that. It was a pop-up screen here, but then, nah. Anyways, so I'd rather avoid ASRock. In very short, my server that I have here running runs on an ASRock motherboard with integrated CPU, and there's actually a bug in the CPU, or with the CPU and Linux kernel, and cost me a lot of time, a lot of RMAing stuff, and no, not a fan. And I've had some other motherboards from them that were less than spectacular, so yeah, I'm avoiding them. So the ones I personally trust, but this does differ, and don't go by just this, but Asus, depending on possibly BioStar, Gigabyte, and MSI. They're usually pretty good, depending on what you're buying. So again, this is not a buyer's guide. This is a how do I find what I want to buy. and it does involve a lot of time and research. So if you want to do the research, it can be very, very worth it, because you can usually get better components than buying a completed computer. Usually save about 10 to 20%, depending on what you're getting, potentially even more. So yeah, then you want to figure out what socket do you want. Sometimes you can just pick for like Intel or AMD. In this case, it's actually socket. For Intel, I am not all that up to speed what their current socket is. It's one of the 11 ones, I think, or is it 2011? No, I think this is the older one. I think 1151 is their newest, I do believe. But I am very out of the loop with Intel. So for me, I already knew I want to go with a AM4. Because that was just what I was looking for. I was waiting for this lineup. I waited for a while, did my research, found out that it was doing quite well, and decided, you know, that's what I want to get. So, socket AM4, I think it's currently bugged out a little bit. There's only a couple showing up. Or is there a different AM4? Socket AM4 and AM4. Okay. One result. Really? I think the website is glitching out. No, there we go. It says 0, but there's actually multiple. Okay then. So, that's your first choice. Then, second, once you got that sorted, like I know what brands I want to get and don't want to get. I know what CPU generation I want to get, so that's your socket. Then you figure out which chipset. Well, in this case, let's take a look. Oh, there's nothing more, there's just that. So there's the A320, the B350, and the X370. Well, I don't know, what do I get? Well, look at them. Go Google what is the difference between these chipsets, and then you find out that this chipset has a little bit more features and a bit more PCI Express lanes and support for more SATA connections internally and more USB connections. There's not that much difference, so for most people this is enough. I have a lot of USB devices and I want to hook them all up in the back, nothing on the front, so I decided to go with this one to have some more USB and have some more PCI Express lanes. Because you don't want to run out of those. Not going to go in depth what that is, that's technique. You just don't want to run to the issue where there are too few lanes for what you're actually putting in. Minor detail, but so yeah, I personally want to go for that. That already in this case cuts our results down to what? 9? 9. Okay, so minimum amount of memory you want to have in there. I preferably use a website that's supports filters, because it makes your life so much easier. Well, let's say that we want at least, I would say 16 gigs. Go on. Well, 15, whatever. Wait, is that maximum or minimum? Excuse me, that's maximum. Okay, never mind. So we want something that supports enough. I thought it was minimum, my bad. So that's not really a useful filter for us right now. Actually, there is minimum, I'm stupid. This is minimum. So let's say that the minimum is 15, whatever. Well, still everything, because nowadays everything supports that. So, you found that much amount of slots, preferably 4 if at all possible. And then there's the form factor, which we only have one choice. That's basically how big it is. ATX is for a normal, quote-unquote, big computer case. And then you have micro and mini ATX, which is like, mini is about this much cut off from the board. And micro is about half this size from the board, I do believe, but don't quote me on that. Those form factors are whack. So, we have this sorted. Now you basically have your subset of what you want to do your research into. So we now have a manageable 9. That's a lot better. Something I've learned by trial and error in the past, don't cheapskate out on your motherboard. Just don't do it. Now luckily, with the AM4, which is brand new, pretty much everything out right now is pretty much high quality. So you can't really, go wrong on these. Now there is an exception, but yeah. So that is what you're looking at, okay? Trust me, don't cheapskate out on a motherboard. Go for the extra quality, it will help you. If you are just building a PC to just browse the interwebs, negate everything I said, go for whatever, doesn't matter. But if you want to do gaming and overclocking especially, go for the good shit, trust me. I've had a burned out motherboard because I went for a cheaper one. Ain't doing that again. It actually burned out my motherboard and my CPU. Had to return both of them. It was a poorly designed motherboard, by the way. Something that wasn't quite known when I got it. There weren't good in-depth details on that. but some of the condensators that they used, the VRAM that they used on it, VRM, excuse me, was terrible. Anyways, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, this one is pretty terrible. Why did my screen just go blank? Hold on. Seriously? Google works? Is this website seriously just down? Are you kidding me? I think it is. Okay, let me go to a different website. We'll be right back. Are you kidding me? This website literally just went down. I'm refreshing right now, in case you can't tell. You can see it now. Are you kidding me? It's actually down. Wow, we caught it live. Good job. Okay, let me find a different website. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Went to a different website. Oh, really? Java is probably disabled. That's why it's doing this weird shit with the banner. Or that's intended. I have not visited their website in a while. I have no idea. Anywho, so we have a list here. The list is slightly bigger, but these are not currently available. So yeah, don't go too cheap. Look for the features that you need. So before you start diving into what motherboard do I want, look at what you need. How many SATA ports do you need to have at least? So that's your hard drives, that's your DVD drives, DVD burner, those kind of devices. How many do you have? How many do you want to put in there? Because I still have my current ones, but you can, buy new ones. So look at how many you're going to need there, and maybe leave one extra if you ever need to expand or add a different hard drive or something. So look at how many you need. Then count your USB devices. How many do you have, and how many do you expect to have in the future? So for me, I have the microphone that I'm currently recording with. I have a gamepad, my Razer Nostromo. I have a keyboard. I have a mouse. I have a wireless headset. I have, what else do I have? Speaker power. I have, I don't know, that's 6 already. I think it was one more thing. I'm forgetting something. But yeah, that's already 6 USB ports. A lot of motherboards only come with 6. So if that was all I needed, it would just barely fit. I think I have one more device. I think it came down to 7 or potentially 7. So, strongly recommend you apply this update. Nope, you guys can't see it, but I got a update notification. There, go away. So, add those up, write them down what you need, and look for motherboards that have that. Like I said, use websites that have filters, so you can actually do that. This one has a lot less filters. We have some here. Let's take a look. Oh, it's not working because I'm blocking. Temporarily allow. Maybe that will work. There we go. So, filters. M.2. Do we want 1 or 2? Sure. Amount of DDR4 slots. We want 4. Brand. Well, that's already good. Form factor. We want ATX. Max memory, that's fine. So, amount of SATA ports, or SATA ports, whatever you want to say. 6, 8, 4, or 10. I would say that 6, 8. Bugger. I hate it when they just refresh instantly. We don't want 4. 4 is not enough. It technically is, but let's say it's not, right? So, then you have your subset. We have about the same, I think, as we had on the other one, 9, 10, 11. Okay, we have a little bit more on this website. But anyways, you have your subset here. Now you basically dive into, okay, what do we have here? Well, we can't filter out the, you can see here, this is a B350. I don't want the 350, I only want the 370. Which I don't think I can actually do here. Do we have that? HDMI, SPDIF, DisplayPort, more filters. Okay, let's see if we can do multi-GPU, VGA, M.2, call if you see it, USB 3 if you want that, that's another one you could select on. Basically just go down and filter everything that you want. And that will limit down on, I don't see it. I'm probably overlooking it, but yeah. That will already filter down what you have, what you have available. That's always good, limiting down your choices. Then, once you have that, let's say you found your motherboard. Nah, I can't see the filter, whatever. Let's say you have your motherboard, you pick the one you want. Hey, let's go for that one. That seems familiar. By the way, look at the ridiculous amount of SATA ports on this thing. Not SATA, excuse me, USB ports. Yeah, that's freaking ridiculous, I know. Yeah. Anyways. that's not the well, it's sort of the reason why I got it. It was either you have 6 ports or you have a retarded amount of ports. So yeah. So then you want to look at how many video cards or potential expansion cards you want to have in there. Well, you have 3 times PCI Express 16 times, and that's PCI Express 3.0. You can see that's down. Yeah, here. This is important information. The PCI Express 16 slots are 20 lanes hooked up, and slots 1 and 2 are PCI Express Gen 3. Slot 1 is with a maximum of 16 lanes, slot 2 is with a maximum of 8 lanes, and slot 3 with a maximum of 4 lanes connected. So you need to take that into consideration. This information is important stuff because this will sometimes they fudge around with the ports, with the PCI Express. So read that kind of info or find reviews that tell you that kind of info, because it's actually really nice that they mention that here because it's not always mentioned. So that is pretty key information. So yeah, do look for that stuff. I'm not going to go in depth too much on that sort of stuff. So yeah, one of the things I wanted is an M.2 slot. If you're wondering what that is, it's basically a new form of hard drive, a new connection for hard drives is what it comes down to. Again, I assume you have knowledge if you're going to build your own computer, right? So then you need to find out what CPUs work with this. Well, I'm not sure where they're listed. It's socket AM4, and here we go. Ryzen series, so all of the Ryzens are supported. Okay, now you found out what CPU can I put in here, right? You can also, on the website from the vendor, in this case Asus, you can find what is allowed. We'll get to that in a second. So then you go for your CPU. What do you want for a CPU? Well, we already decided we want to go with AMD. So let's go for processors. Again, this is in Dutch, but I'm pretty sure you guys can understand what we're looking at. So then I decided, well, I already did a lot of research into the processor. I figured out, I want a, let's see, what do we have? CPU type, well, Ryzen 7, good. That limits down our choices to 3. We have the 1800X, we have the 1700X, and the 1700. Well, at 50 bucks difference, this thing is easily overclockable to be around this one, and even potentially overclockable to be very equal to this one. Yeah, that's 200 bucks difference, almost. Yeah, and you can, with the right tools and circumstances and time, you can get it just about as powerful as this one. So yeah. Now this one does come with the Rave Spire, which is a cooler. Didn't really care for it, but I mean, it's 50 bucks cheaper. I'm not going to pay 50 bucks for the X. I'm trying to remember what it's called. The X feature, what I talked about. Basically, it overclocks it a little bit automatically if it's cooled properly. It's not the boost. That's a different thing, by the way. There's boost and there's another thing, and that's the X, basically. As you can see, this one boosts to 3.7. This one boosts to 3.8. That's not a lot of difference. You can easily overclock that. So, not worried about that. So I went with a cheaper one because I know I can lift it up to this and potentially this kind of standards. One thing in AMD in particular, but it does work for Intel a little bit as well, is the memory speed matters quite a lot, so don't cheap out on memory either. Again, something I've learned, didn't matter as much with the previous generation, but with Ryzen it matters directly. The faster your memory, the faster your CPU. So again, don't cheapskate out on the memory. Good memory makes a huge difference with the Ryzen CPUs. So keep that into account. Now, what memory do you get? Well, you have to go back to your motherboard and decide, or not decide, but look at what your motherboard supports. So let's head over to the Asus website in this case. I'm just going to use my computer as an example because I did all the research into it, but we'll be right back once we get there. And here we are with the motherboard. So, what are we looking at? Well, always skip this page because this page is just blah 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 buzzword blah 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 buzzwords RGB lighting, and that's pretty much the contents of this page. Don't put any stock in it. They'll fancify everything. Even if the motherboard could fart, they would still call it a smell sensation of unknown origin and blah blah. It's just blah blah. It absolutely is. I mean, technically it's true, but my god, it's blah blah blah. Blah 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 blah. So, yeah, don't. Anyway, let's head back here. So, you always want to go to the specifications page. Okay, so, looking at here, this is where you get your raw data from, like what does it support? Well, Ryzen, 7th generation A series, and Athlon. Okay, so it supports Ryzen, that's what I want, good. Supports up to 8 cores, okay, this possibly is going to get upgraded in the future because AMD just announced 16 cores, yeah, crazy. So, looking at this is where things get important. It supports 4 DIMMs, 4 slots, maximum of 64 gigs, DDR4, and these are the speeds that it supports. Non-ACC or ECC, unbuffered, that's sort of goes with the ECC part. I'm not sure why they mentioned the processor here again. Oh, it differs per processor, right? This is for Ryzen, this, and then this is for non-Ryzen. Okay, right. So that's fine. So this is what we're looking at, right? Now, the important thing is, what does it actually support? Well, you have to actually go to support. It's called ondersteuning here, but support. Then memory device support. That's what this is called. Click. Man, that website is slow. Okay, here we go. So, if you look here, we see the DRAM QVL only for AMD Ryzen. So what this means is this is a motherboard name, DRAM as in RAM in your computer. QVL is the qualified vendors list, so who do we support? For AMD Ryzen. Now, you can download this, it's a PDF, it will basically have SKUs, which is sort of like a serial number of memory, and tell you which ones are supported. I sort of threw this out the window and I went a different route, but I did look at this and figure out like what is supported, what isn't. And then I bought a different one that I've then checked the reviews of people using that particular memory with this particular motherboard and seeing if it worked. Not every piece of memory will be listed on this list because they don't test everything, they don't, approve everything. But quite often it will work anyways. But it is something you can check if you want to make sure that it will work with your motherboard. Get that, and otherwise you're gonna have to gamble. I gambled because I'm getting pretty much top of the line memory. It's expensive as fudge, but it's really good memory. So let's head over to the memory and I'll talk a little bit about that, and then we're done with this video because it's running on way too long. So we'll be right back once I get that up. And here we are. So I went with the G.Skill TridentZ memory, 32 gigs, because I render stuff and I do other stuff. I run servers off here for friends, potentially, that I'm playing with, or, I do a lot of stuff. So, yeah. I went with this one because G.Skill at the moment is one of the best vendors out there. And I did a lot of research into this, and a lot of people are turning to G.Skill. Now, one thing that's really fudged up with the memory currently is that the actual chips on the memory itself, like the actual memory chips that are in here, they have to be made by Samsung because they provide better overclockability than the current Hynix dies. B dies is what they're called. B die as in DIE. Look it up. So a lot of research again went into this, and this is like the best possible memory you can pretty much get right now. It's expensive though. I'm paying close to $300 for this memory. It's ridiculous. I am getting 32 gigs, so for most game rigs, I would say 16 gigs is more than enough. It's not quite enough for what I'm doing. For most of the things I'm doing, it's enough, but not everything it's enough. So that's why I'm getting 32, because there's nothing in between. You can't really get like an uneven set, because then the timings on the memory are going to be off, and yeah, all kinds of crap. So yeah, that's why I went with this memory, but this is actually not on the qualified vendors list. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. So as you can see here, it works with a lot of boards, but there's no AMD here. So yeah, they only have Intel ones here. So we're going to have to find out. I've seen people that use this memory. I've seen multiple that use this memory. and I've seen people achieving the best overclocks with this memory and most stable, so that's why I went with it. I just did my research, a lot of it, and that's why I went with it. Here you can see the number. This is the SKU that I was talking about, sort of the serial number, sort of universal serial number. Let's look at the specifications. It's tested. Now this is important. It's tested up to 3200, but it doesn't run at that because 3200 is not an official speed, not a sanctioned JEDEC speed. JEDEC is the organization that sets the standards for memory, right? So this is what it's actually clocked on. So it doesn't mean that your memory will run this fast out of the box, but you have to go into your BIOS and actually turn it on to that speed. So that again is something you need to be aware of. Bit of a pitfall. Doesn't include a fan, well, didn't expect it would. And this is basically what you need, the Intel XAMP feature, which AMD has its own version of, but yeah. That was a lot of talking, but hopefully this gives you guys some knowledge as to how you sort your components and what kind of research you need to do. Height is also included, so that's another piece of information that you need to have. So that's where you can find that. Often you'll find it at the web shop, but if you don't, go to the vendors page and you usually will find that kind of info. So that is sort of all the info that I had to scrounge together to figure out what I want to get and if it's going to work. I'm not 100% sure. This memory is a bit of a gamble. The cooler I have is not the one I want to get because that one was not available. So again, this one is kind of an estimated gamble, as it were. Like, I did as much research as I could, looked at all the heights and dimensions, and it should fit, but you don't know until you try. But that's what they have returning for. If it doesn't fit and it's, still not used, you can just return and go like, well, this is not what I wanted. I ordered it, didn't seem to fit. Oh well. And most web stores will just accept that, no problem, especially over here. Don't know in other countries, but in the Netherlands it's quite decently covered. Because you can't view the product beforehand, as it were. In a web shop, you actually have 14 days to just return it, no questions asked. Very nice. So hopefully this will help you guys to figure out how does it work, how do you figure out what you need to look for. Now this is sort of tuned to what I had to look for. This does not include hard drives, it does not include video cards because I already have all that stuff. So that's at least that. But yeah, other than that, hopefully this is useful for some of you guys. It's a bit of theory crafting, but also just getting the idea out there of how does this actually work. Hopefully my memory is coming in tomorrow. And probably this weekend I will be building this computer, and you'll probably see a video of that and some tests coming out. Got some building to do, got some stuff to do. It's going to be a busy weekend, so not sure how I'm going to be with videos. We'll have to see, but at least we got this, right? Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, please subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.